Okay. Okay, hopefully people will sign in and we'll get them in here and they won't miss too much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is a community informational meeting for the issuance of a Part 70 Title V operating permit for Chalk Point Power LLC. My name is Sana Sarasak. I'm the manager of the Air Quality Permits Program at the Maryland Department of the Environment. Before we get started with anything, I just wanted to get some just basic introductions, let you know who's here. Do you want to go ahead and get started, Marcy?
Hi, I'm Marcelina Gurley with Maryland Department of the Environment. I am the Chief of Technical Division, and I wrote this permit.
Shannon?
Yeah, that's better. Hi, folks. I'm Shannon Heafy. I'm the Air Quality Permits Programs Public Participation Coordinator. I usually run hearings and the informational meetings. Tonight, since this is an informal meeting, we're here. Marcy will be presenting. The company will be presenting. And as Sana said, there's going to be a Q&A period where we can talk about questions. But as she said in the beginning, let's keep everybody on mute for now so there's no background interference while our folks are speaking. So thank you all for coming or tuning in.
And then we have two representatives, the people representing Chalk Point Power. Did you want to go ahead, Dave?
Yes. This is Dave Kramer. I am the Senior Manager of Environmental for GenOn Corporate. And so I've been participating with MDE on getting the permit renewed.
I'm Mike Bennett. I'm the plant manager for Chalk Point, Dickerson, and Morgantown stations.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, I think Shannon misspoke a little bit. There isn't an official presentation by the permit engineer, but I am going to give a little bit of a background as to why we're having this community informational meeting. The Chalk Point Power facility, it used to be GenOn Chalk Power. They have what's called a federal air operating permit from the Air Quality Permits Program of the Department of the Environment, and it's renewable every 5 years. And so they applied for a renewal, and unfortunately it was almost their existing permit has been out for about 7 years now because of the COVID pandemic. There was a delay in the issuance of this renewal, and they've made a lot of changes at their plant, including shutting down some coal units. So the permit may look a little different, but I think most of you will be pleasantly surprised that it really, it's an operating permit. It doesn't authorize any new construction, any new emissions, any increases in emissions. It's just a continuance of the operation of existing equipment at their facility. So GenOn is going to be presenting and kind of explaining what's going on at Chalk Point. And so anyway, so the permit is ready to be issued, and we had public notices go out June 9th, and there was a public comment period that was open through July 11th. So we posted in a newspaper, on the website, we sent it to elected officials and other interested parties. And we didn't receive any comments, but we did get the director of the Prince George County Department of the Environment, Ms. Andrea Crooms. She did notify us, and she said, hey, there's a lot of public interest in this facility. Could you at least have a community informational meeting to explain what's going on at this facility? Because I think a lot of people would be interested to know what's going on and kind of put a face, and just sort of explain what this permit is and what it's for and what it's not going to allow them to do in the future. So without, I guess, further ado, let me just turn it over to both Mike Bennett and Dave Kramer if you guys want to share your screen and start your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Sana. Let me just take a second to get the presentation up. So just make sure I get this going here. All right, can everyone see that screen?
Yeah, we can see it. I can see it. Hopefully everybody else can see it. All
right, then Mike, do you want to lead off, please?
Sure thing. Go ahead and go to the first slide, Dave. First off, good evening, everyone. So what you're looking at there is we've got a couple overhead shots of the Chalk Point facility. That shot is actually a couple of years old. That is with all of the operating units that are there. You can see the last addition that was constructed at the facility was the scrubber, which is the stack that you see with the steam plume coming out, and the coal pile there to the right. Within the building itself, there's the original units 1 and 2. Those 2 units are the coal-fired units, which also had supplemental natural gas. Those are the units that we'll be talking about. They've actually retired as of last June. Units 3 and 4 are the 2 with the larger stacks, red and white stacks. They're gas-fired units, and they also have the prominent cooling towers associated with them, which are for cooling the steam that has gone through the steam turbines, and then recirculates back to the tower. Directly in front of the building are 2 combustion turbines, CT1 and 2. Those were installed back when we were Pepco as black start units, so to support the grid in restoration, and they continue to operate commercially. And then over on the upper right side is CTs 3, 4, 5, and 6, and also a CT that's called the SMECO CT. Those were all installed in the 90s. They're gas fired and oil fired, and they're what's typically called peaking units. They'll operate during high market opportunity days. They're not steam driven or have combined cycle units. You can go to the next slide, Dave. So here's just a little different perspective, of the site, so that you can kind of see the combustion turbines and the oil tanks a little clearer over here. A little better view of the cooling towers as well. And there's a building that you see that right down in the middle. That is what we call the technical services building. So there's some administrative and some maintenance activities that go there. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Dave. So this is actually a Google Earth shot, and you can see in this photo that the coal pile is gone. We consumed the last of that coal prior to the shutdown, and we have graded that area, and it's actually growing grass at this point in time. So we'll talk about on a couple other slides. We're actually starting to remove some of the equipment that is there. So everything that's associated with the coal-fired units has been shut down and is in the process of either most of it's been decommissioned, some of it's actually being taken down. Go ahead, Dave. So here's a breakdown of the units. Now everything is included here. You can see units 1 and 2, their original megawatt ratings. So column 2 there is how many megawatts each one of the units would put out into the PJM grid. So coal units 1 and 2 were retired in June of 21. Units 3 and 4 continue to operate. CT 1 and 2 we talked about on the east side of the building there. Oil-fired units continue to operate. 3, 4, 5, and 6. An interesting fact with SMECO CT is we were a part of NRG up until around 2018, I believe. NRG maintains ownership of that combustion turbine, but we operate and maintain that unit at this time. Good, Dave. And there are some supporting equipment that are necessary. There's 4 auxiliary boilers, very small boilers that are in the building. They've been there, for quite some time. Those are used to help start up the steam units. small boilers. They generate auxiliary steam, and we use that steam to supply steam heating for the air, and also for sealing steam for the turbines to get them online. And they supply building heat for the facility. And then we have some diesel engines that are there. Primarily, CT2 has a diesel starter because it was a black start machine. The others are fire pumps. We supply our own fire system. So, in the event of a loss of an AC oil or an AC fire pump, we do have a diesel fire pump that will make sure that we have ample fire water to support any of the needs. And then the MTS, that's that Maintenance Technical Services building, also has a backup generator should it lose power. All the power in the facility comes via reserve feeders off of the Pepco switchyard. So we're completely self-contained when it comes to power. When we're not generating, we're pulling back off of the grid. Good, Dave. So here's a little bit of detail here on the next couple slides, and then I'll turn it over to Dave for some of the impacts with the coal going away. So Chalk Point, has always been its own entity under the variety of owners that we've had, whether it's Pepco, Southern Energy, Mirant. We were GenOn at one time, then we became NRG, and now we're back to GenOn again. So when the decision was made to deactivate and decommission the coal units, the legal entities were split. So Chalk Point Power is all of the remaining assets, 3 and 4 units, the CTs. Chalk Point Steam is associated with the land and the equipment and the portion of the building that is associated with the coal units. So it's just a different legal structure that the company decided to put in play. We still operate it as one facility and manage the entire asset base. Another thing to make note of is Pepco has 2 high voltage switch yards on the property, and they own that land. SMECO has a switch yard as well, a 69 kV switch yard, and Washington Gas has transmission lines that come into the facility that support our combustion needs as well for the various units. So some of those, again, Pepco owns some property that was divided off when Pepco sold the plants to Southern Energy back in 2000, and the other properties are leased by those entities for their assets that are there. Go ahead, Dave. So with the coal gone away, there are several things that are no longer needed. Coal deliveries by rail, limestone and gypsum also came in. Gypsum went out. Gypsum was a byproduct of our scrubber that was installed in 2010. The limestone was used in the absorber to treat the flue gas and create the gypsum byproduct. So right now the rail is out of service. There's no traffic on that. Ash removal by truck. There was 2 main ash residuals that came from the combustion of coal. There was fly ash that was entrained in the gas that was removed by precipitators. So that of course is gone. You don't have that with gas burning on the remaining units. And bottom ash was the heavier ash, sometimes called slag, that would fall from the boiler walls and be captured in the bottom and would be sluiced out and crushed and eventually removed by truck also. So all of the rail activities, the ash removal activities, we used to always get urea. Urea was used to assist in the emissions controls to help reduce NOx. Those rail cars would come in and we would offload those into the tanks that we had. So those the urea was consumed, the tanks were cleaned and closed, and there's no more rail activity associated with that. And then, of course, all of the coal and ash handling activity, unloading the coal, dumping the coal cars, crushing the coal, storing the coal, treating any of the runoff from the coal pile or some of the surrounding areas. All of those activities have ceased because there's no longer any coal or ash handling going on at this time. Go ahead, Dave. So, with that, we immediately started decommissioning and making safe, air gapping, lines and power supplies for portions of the plant or of the building that were no longer to be used. Some of it we've actually gone ahead and started to take it down. We wanted to look at it proactively. And not wait for it to have any issues. So the coal pile, as we showed in the photo, has been removed, and now that's just a grass field. The breaker house, that's right where the coal would come up and be broken from say lumps of coal to smaller chunks, so it could follow through on the conveyors. That's been removed. A piece of equipment called the Dravo that would reclaim coal off the pile and put on the belt, that's been taken down. We're in the process of removing three old number 6 oil tanks that have been out of service for several years and decommissioned, but they're not going to come back in play. So we're having those demolished at this time. We did a lot of salvage and sales of some of the equipment that was no longer be needed. We did find some folks out in the industry and in other places that were still using coal in other states, and we're interested in some of that equipment, and we were able to help them out. So a lot of our FGD and water treatment equipment, which in reality was not that old, it was just commissioned in 2010. Is now serving another life in another state for another coal-fired plant. And we did have netting at the intake before the circulating water pumps off of the river. That netting was removed because that water withdrawal that we would do is now gone with those units shut down. So we removed that netting last fall, I believe, before winter. Since it was no longer needed. Go ahead, Dave. I think I'll turn it over to you now, Dave, to go over the.
Very good. Okay. Well, yeah, thanks, Mike. Again, this is Dave Kramer. I'm in the environmental group with GenOn, and so with the retirement of the 2 coal units, there are several federal and state regulations that were geared towards those coal units. And so this is just a list of the regulations that we had to comply with while they were operating. So the mercury and air toxic standards is a EPA rule that regulates SO2, NOx, and mercury. Then actually, this is an air permit process, but the effluent limitation guidelines. I know there's some people who are probably interested in the water as well. There's some requirements on the water discharges, which since, like Mike is saying, we don't need to draw in and discharge water like we used to. That falls away, and then the Clean Water Act. Yeah, that's the rule on entrainment of fish and fish eggs into the units. So then on the state level, the Maryland Healthy Air Act was enacted in 2007, and so that required us to put in the scrubbers that Mike had talked about, and also had limits on NOx as well. And then 2015, there was the Maryland ozone NOx regulation that went into effect, which regulated the coal-fired units in the summer months from May through September each year. Then there's a compliance assurance monitoring plan, which is actually focused on stack emissions of opacity. So that's how cloudy the smoke is coming out of the stack. So that since we don't have the coal units in service anymore, that doesn't come into play. And then yeah, several various consent decrees over the years that had accumulated that affected those coal units, which are now not applied in effect. Okay, so then of course there are still plenty of rules and regulations which do still apply, and including the cross-state air pollution rule, which is also called CASPR. That is the cap and trade program, which regulates SO2, NOx on an annual basis and NOx on an ozone season basis. So that, and there's been some recent changes. In 2021, there was a tightening of the ozone season NOx rules, and there's another one proposed that they proposed to have take effect in early next year in 2023. Of course, then there's the acid rain program, which is an SO2 program primarily, which is still in effect. And then Maryland participates in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is a carbon dioxide program to control emissions of greenhouse gases. And then in addition, there's the they call it the Boiler Act, the Industrial, Commercial, Institutional Boiler Maximum Available Control Technology rule, which the auxiliary boilers actually are affected by that. So there's still a lot of regulations that we have to observe. But I'm going to turn to sort of, Mike went over which units, are still active at the plant. And what I want to do here is kind of show in the past few years how these units been operating, and also just to sort of show that they've been here a while and they're running as they always have been, essentially. So you can see, operation. These are the two steam units, units 3 and 4. They're the 595 megawatt. They're quite large, and they would run. They run slightly differently each year. Depends on how cold a winter we have, how hot a summer we have. So in 2019, they ran over 100 hours, but maybe 150 hours. 2020 was a bit more. Unit 4 ran about 500 hours. 2021 was much less so, around 250 hours, and then this year is running just ahead of 2021. So that's just sort of giving you a continuum of those units. Now for the combustion turbines, I have these laid out here. So each unit is a particular color, and again, I have the past 4 years of operation. And for these peaking units, you can see that year in and year out, they all run under 100 hours a piece. So the high year was actually 2021 for combustion turbine 5 and 6, where they ran about 60 hours. So these units are not running all the time, but they are needed for reliability in the system, and so that's why we continue to keep them ready to run. So then flipping over from operating hours to air emissions, looking at the primary emissions: nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, total particulate matter, the fine particulate matter, PM 2.5, and carbon dioxide. Now, in order to get all these onto the same scale, I had to divide the CO2 by 1,000. So just keep that in mind. But again, the idea here is to show how the unit had been running up until 2021, when the coal units shut down, and then so far this year in 2022, you can see that emissions are much lower because it's just the primarily gas. We burn gas for the majority of all the generation now at Chalk Point. We do burn some oil, but it is mostly gas, and therefore the emissions come way down. Yeah, and okay, that's all we really had here, just to give you a feel of, which units are there, how much they run, what the emissions look like, and we're ready now to answer any of your questions.
Okay, so before, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Mike, for that presentation. Before we get started with questions, we do have at the bottom of your screen, there's like a hand. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and we can call on you and you can unmute yourself. There's also a Q&A. If you go to the far right, there's like a triangle and a square and a circle that has a Q&A where you can actually enter questions in. And then if there's people on the phone, after we get all of the people who are joining via computer, I'll call out like the last 2 digits. All I can see are the last 2 digits of the phone number, and then they can unmute themselves using *6. But before we start with the questions, I just wanted to kind of explain what's going on. So because Jenna, it's very confusing, and I know I'm going to be saying a lot of words, and hopefully it'll make sense. But the Chalk Point facility had a Title V permit for 5 years that had an expiration date of November 30th, 2020. They submitted a timely renewal to renew their Title V permit. And also at the same time, they told us that they were going to split entities, stop burning coal. But since they were operating coal and the combustion turbines at the same time, we talked to EPA, and EPA wanted them to submit both a renewal for the coal units entity and then an initial permit for the existing combustion turbines that are there, because they were going to separate that out. So it got really confusing. So it looks like it's an initial permit, but it's really just renewing the portion of the plant that's still there. What it's going to do is it's not going to renew all of the coal units that are still currently allowed to operate, because as long as the facility submits a timely application, and unfortunately it was right in the middle of COVID, and we've been just catching up to all of our backlogs since the pandemic started. They had already retired the coal units, and so then that entity kind of dropped away. So all we're doing is issuing the initial permit for just the combustion turbines. And by doing that, it pretty much like sunsets and closes out the coal units, so they will no longer have the ability to operate the coal units. Right now, without issuing that permit, they're still under the existing permit that has the coal units on it. Technically, they're not, they've retired them, but it still gives them permission to run it. And what we want to do is shut that down completely and give them only the permit that allows them to operate the combustion turbines. So that's just what this is for. So this initial permit that we're getting ready to issue is only for the existing equipment that he talked about that has nothing, and all of the coal equipment is gone, and everything that's related to that is no longer going to be allowed to operate at the facility. Okay, so we did have a couple hands raised, and I apologize. I don't know which ones came first. I think it was Matthew Rosenblum. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, good evening. This is Matthew Rosenblum with the City of Bowie. I know that you covered rail briefly in the presentation, but I was just curious if, aside from the slide in the presentation, if you had any future plans for the rail line, or if that's completely out of the question with the new units, considering that they're not coal-fired.
There's no for the remaining units, Matthew. There's no need for the rail. The gas is transported by a pipeline. Oil we receive via truck. Possibly, and when you get into demo, moving some of the larger pieces of metal by rail instead of by road may be an option. That's something we would have to talk about, and with CSX and do all that. So, but to support operations, the answer is no.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I think Miss Andrea Crooms.
Yeah, so I just wanted to take a second to just thank folks for coming. My name is Andrea Crooms. I'm the director of the Prince George's County Department of the Environment. And like MDE said, we did request this meeting to try to increase the transparency of various things going on in the environmental world in our community. But I wanted to say thank you. I see Mayor Waters from my gosh, Eagle Harbor is here. I also see former Mayor Riazzi from Cheverly is here. I've got a lot of folks who came from our resident advisory group and my own staff from DOE who joined us. But I also wanted to recognize my boss is the Deputy CAO for Government Operations, Mr. Holtz, and just again thank MDE for having this meeting and for my own administration for the for the support and for the local members of the community coming out to learn more about what this project is, and of course to GenOn for being willing to have this conversation and really opening up the doors to helping us understand their work.
Great, thank you. And I think we have a hand raised from Mr. Henry Cole.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Henry Cole. I'm a board member of the Patuxent Riverkeeper. I served as a member of the Climate Action Plan Board, and I've been very active in matters involving air quality in Prince George's County and other places. So I had a couple of questions. One is the question that the permit document that I read only has data from 2019. It doesn't have data from 2020 or 2021. So I was curious about that, why the new application does not have more up-to-the-date emissions information.
So Marcy, you might chime in if I get this wrong, but I'm assuming, are you talking about the fact sheet that has the 5 years of emissions information in the fact sheet to the permit? Okay, so facilities are required to certify their emissions typically by April 1st of the following year for the prior year. GenOn by regulation is required to give us the actual an estimate by a certain time, but not the actual emissions, and we don't really get the actual emissions until much later. And so when this permit was actually drafted and going through the internal review, I believe the only full complete year we had was 2019. So it does look probably extremely large because they shut down the coal units in 2021. So we could probably provide you with 2020 and 2021, but we wouldn't, 2022 is not finished yet. That's the year that you'll see that they don't have any emissions at all because they shut their coal units down in the middle of 2021.
Okay,
but I don't know if, I mean, so we could, I don't know, Marcy, if you had those years when you were drafting the permit. I don't think you did.
No, I didn't have those years yet when we were drafting it. So,
right. So they have to be
certified.
certified.
Yeah.
So they have to be certified after the emissions happen. So that's why we didn't have those numbers. But we can definitely provide those numbers to you. At least 20. I believe we have 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. I had one more question, which is if you look at the tables in that, I guess it's the fact sheet document. There's a discrepancy. If you look at table 3, it says that the greenhouse gas emissions for 2019 are 68,999. But then if you look at the attachments 1 and 2, for operating units, if you look at the summary for 2019 for the station, what's called the station summary, the CO2 is 660 plus 667,000 tons per year. So that's quite a discrepancy in the 2019. If someone could explain why those numbers are so different, table 3, greenhouse gas emissions summary versus attachment 16, the station summary. I didn't understand that.
Okay, I see where you're getting the table 3, and then you said, I'm sorry, attachment 16?
Yes,
Is that to the draft permit document?
it's the same document. Yes, I believe. It says
Hey, Dave.
GHG and air toxics, attachment 60.
Okay.
And it also says in a paragraph that the generating stage is a major source of CO2 equivalents. So that would be more than the that would be more than the 69,000 that's reported for 2019 on table 3. So I was confused by these very different numbers.
Okay, while I'm looking up attachment 16, I just, Dave Kramer, I don't know if you have any explanation or maybe you have an idea of why there's a difference there?
Yeah, I apologize. I don't have that application or the fact sheet in front of me. I can verify that the facility emissions in 2019 were the 667,000. So that's correct. And so the table 3 it was only, what did it say, 69,000? Is that what you were saying, Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe there's
well,
a
yeah,
decimal error. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Okay. Again, I don't have it in front of me, but the 667,000 number is the correct number for 2019.
Okay. All right. You might want to look into that. Those are my questions. I'll have a few comments later.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so if there's a typo on that, we'll verify that on the table 3. It sounds like table 3 has probably a decimal typo. Sometimes a digit gets deleted by accident. Okay, and then we have, before we get to Noah Waters, we do have a question in the Q&A. Amity Pope, she just wanted me to repeat when we'll receive a copy of the recorded meeting. So it takes about 24 hours for Google Meet to actually send me the file, and it's huge, and it comes in a Google Drive to I don't know, it's like a notification and I have to get it. But then what happens is it's so large, it's not shareable. So I have to make a request, like put in a service ticket with our Department of Information Technology, and then they compress it and put it in, you know, a way that it's shareable, and they'll provide me a link to that. Sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes a little bit longer than that. But as soon as I get the file, I'll put the request in, and I have to send them the file or share the file with them, and they can go into the drive and, you know, make it shareable. And unfortunately, if you were unable to register for this meeting using the Google form, I will not be able to get your complete email. It will only send me a partial email. So anyone who was not able to register, if you want a copy of this recording or any future correspondence related to this meeting, you should send your email address to our public participation coordinator. That's Shannon.Heafey, Heafey, at Maryland, the entire word, and I'll repeat it again, .gov at the end of the meeting. Any questions that you have related to this, you can email Shannon Heafey, and or add your email, or the people joining by phone, etc. You know, if you want something via email and you didn't register via the Google form, I'll only get a partial email, so I can't contact you again. So just make sure if you want future correspondence related to this meeting to email Shannon. Mayor Waters, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Town of Eagle Harbor, the power plant is in our backyard. My questions, I have several. Are there plans to upgrade the plant to move away from burning of fossil fuels? It's one of my questions. Another question, is there a sunset for the plant to be decommissioned? And another question is, who does the plant supply power to? Is it the local area? And another important question is about the cooling. I know we have wells going dry in our town. Is there as much water taken from the local aquifer as was before the coal burning? And Another concern is the publication of, I think, June 9th. The town, we've requested from Maryland Department of Environment to be notified of these important events with the power plant. You know, we feel slighted. We're not getting these notifications. I was notified secondhand through a state delegate. So, you know, I think we need to do better. Of course, it would be a concern. And another question is testing. We've requested testing over and over and over again regarding, you know, impacts to our town regarding water and soil. But there seems to be no response. So, you know, I don't know if you've lost track to my numerous questions, but I can reiterate those questions again if need be. Thank you.
Okay, Dave or Mike, did you want to try and answer the first couple of questions, which were about upgrading, sunsetting, and who you supply your power to?
Sure. Yeah, Mike Bennett here. I can answer those. At this point in time, there is no projects that GenOn has to upgrade the facility, install anything at this point in time. Right now, you know, we're still you know, completing the you know, the decommissioning and just maintaining the existing assets that are there. So, you know, the answer to that is not at this time. As far as sunsetting, none of the remaining units that are still on the list, CTs 1 through 6, MECO, CT, and units 3 and 4 have a deactivation date, or have we filed anything for deactivation on those times? We bid. So going back to your next questions, who do we supply? PJM is the independent system operator for the region. So we bid in every day to what's called a day ahead market to PJM, and then units are selected based on the forecast for the entire ISO, you know, based on the number of megawatts that are needed, and then based on the price of the units. So that's why you see when Dave showed the chart with service hours, you know, our cost to operate, you know, it's not as low as some others. So our units are not dispatched where some units may have 1,000 or 1,500 or more service hours. So PJM is who we would have to submit a letter of deactivation, similar to what we've done with the coal units, you know, here at Chalk Point, and the other coal units that GenOn has shut down in Maryland also. Then PJM would look at that along with what they call an independent market monitor. They would look at any impacts to grid reliability and either approve or deny the request to retire or deactivate the units. So at this time, we have not submitted any letters, and that should answer who we supply power to. So it you know, it travels out through the Pepco grid, and, you know, goes wherever it's consumed. You had a question about cooling water. You know,
well water, wasn't it?
Or well water?
Or I think it was whether you're going to be using more water, or if it.
Well,
I'm sorry, Mayor Waters, if you want to repeat the
The
question.
impacts to the aquifer, and if I could back up just a quick second, you say PJM. I'm trying to get a definitive as to who you supply to. It's kind of, you know, I didn't really get. It was kind of confusing to me. So is that local? Is PJM necessarily supplying to the local area, or could that supply go to New York? Could that supply go to New Jersey or some other distance?
Yes, it could. PJM is actually, I guess, going back to the original, it was Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland. But PJM's footprint stretches from Virginia up through New Jersey, Pennsylvania, out to portions of Ohio and Illinois. You know, the grid here on the East Coast is all interconnected, but you have different independent system operators that manage the flow of current and and the power needs within that area. And then you have the subgroups, which are the transmission owners, Pepco, Dominion, First Energy, Constellation, etc. So we're a wholesale provider of power, and then you can choose to buy power from different power suppliers through your whoever supplies power to your home.
I'm sorry, a more defined question would be, is if the local area needs the power plant, if it needs the power plant regarding heating, electricity, those types of matters, is there a local need? Can you answer that? Or do you have any input?
Well, I mean, we put we apply every year to the capacity market that PJM has. PJM looks and says how much megawatts they need and how much reserve megawatts they need. And if units do not or not needed, or their cost is too high, they are not picked up in the capacity market. And that has happened to various units. It hasn't happened to us, but to some other units within the GenOn fleet that did happen. But that hasn't happened to us. So that would be one of the decision points that the company would have to make should that ever happen when we bid into the forward year markets.
Well, while I have you, very quickly, if I could ask, so there was a new power plant that went in Brandywine. Is that more that plant designated to the local area as opposed to your plant possibly going to PJM, going to broader New York, New Jersey, or whatever? I'm just trying to understand the logistics.
Yeah, I can't answer to whether they have any particular contracts that are different. They tie it to the same grid that we do, but whether they have specific contracts with specific loads, I can't answer that.
Okay, and I guess my last two regarding the aquifer.
Yeah,
and testing.
Yeah. So, one of the unfortunate consequences of this effort here is, we had to let a significant amount of folks go. The Chalk Point facility had upwards of 200 people at various times throughout the life of the facility. And right now we have 38 people on staff. And of those 38, some are, traveling between, a couple of the different sites. So they're not there every day. So with that, all of our water withdrawals, not only for cooling the units, but the wells that we have dropped significantly over time. So the demand for water in the wells has gone down, because of that, and because there's less equipment that needed that cooling water as well. So I don't have the exact numbers, Mayor, but I can tell you, it's right along with that, with all of that equipment going out of service and the loss of folks, it's reduced. Now, as far as testing, I'm not sure. We have a NPDES permit, we have our air permit, all of our information is, sampled, analyzed, recorded, uploaded into the DMRs or, the TRI reports. So everything that we do is out there, for folks to see. So I'm not sure if there's additional testing that you're asking about. So let me know.
And last comment, I understand, Biden ran on, he talked about green technology. There's so many. I know Maryland tried to pass some type of humanitarian bill as far as environmental impact of individuals, those types of things. I mean, I guess I'm speaking as a mayor. I'm speaking as a mayor who has to advocate for young people who cannot advocate for themselves, advocate for elderly who oftentimes cannot advocate for themselves. We've been, we've been adjacent to this plant since 1964. Just speaking to the community here, we have the policymakers here, many of the gatekeepers, if you will, here regarding this power plant. I mean, is there any type of contemplation or attitude toward a more green technology, less burning of fossil fuels, because we do know of the impact. There is, real concern. I mean, the science is redundant regarding burning of fossil fuels, and we've had stormwater runoff in the town. We've had much direct impact from the power plant. So the concern is current. It's something that we constantly deal with on a daily basis. So I just put that out there for all of the people on the line, that there is a concern, and I hope there are attitudes to have a redirection as far as the power plant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Just a couple other things. This is for air quality operating permit. So I do apologize that many of you may have not been on our interested parties list for air, because the Chalk Point facility hasn't really had any construction activities or other projects other than renewals of their operating permits at that facility. So with the COVID pandemic delay, it's probably been almost 7 years since we've done any kind of renewal of a permit for them and reached out to the public. So we send our notice, we post it on our web and in the local newspaper, but then we also send it out to any interested parties we already know about and all of the elected officials, in hopes that they disseminate that information. And obviously Andrea was able to send some of that information to some people. But having participated in this meeting, you will get that information. We'll be adding you to an interested parties list for Chalk Point. And anybody who didn't get to register, just send an email. I noticed in the Q&A section, if you go to like the activities block that's got a triangle, square, and circle at the bottom right of the screen, in the Q&A section, Andrea has added Shannon's email. You can definitely email Shannon your email address if you don't think we have it. If you register for this meeting, we definitely do have it. We do have, and also what you were saying about testing for water and soil, I'm not sure who the contacts are. I mean, you can send me information of who you talk to, and I can see if I can, reach out to the Water Administration and Land Administration, because unfortunately, even EPA operates this way. Federal EPA is that we sort of were very siloed all through the 90s and 2000s, where water operates on its own, air operates on its own, and land sort of operates on its own. And we do have our connections, but if you're on an interested party list for like a land permit or a water permit, that doesn't necessarily mean you're on an interested party list for air. And so we're trying to change that. We are definitely starting a lot more internal discussion and trying to get the groups more together and more on the same page as far as public participation. But please, if you have names of people you talk to, I can definitely try and follow up and see if there's someone in those administrations that can follow up with you on that testing information that you were talking about. Okay, so we have a couple more hands raised. I think it's Miss Janet Gingold.
Hi, I'm Janet Gingold, and I'm with the Prince George's County Sierra Club. I have two questions. One is about what you're doing to measure methane, and I didn't see any evidence that, maybe it's included in the greenhouse gas emissions, not separated out. I'd like to know whether you specifically check for methane leaks. And the other question I have has to do with safety protocols. Whenever we hear stories about these disasters that happen around power plants because something explodes, it makes you worry about the people in.
I'm sorry, Ms. Gingold, I think your screen froze on you. I don't know if anybody else is hearing her. Oh, okay, we got you back. Okay, so did everyone hear that question? She had a question about methane. Dave or Mike?
Yeah, I can respond to that. Yeah, so at Chalk Point, yeah, we burn the number 2 oil and natural gas, and methane is an ingredient in natural gas. We do not have a separate methane emissions source anywhere at the facility. So when we're looking at the greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide, that we're looking at all the fuel consumed, and so the methane is not an individual emission point that we have at the site.
Okay, and I'm not sure, Ms. Gingold, if you had any other additional questions before we move on to the next one.
My other question was about the safety protocols.
Oh, that's right. Do you guys have something that you can talk about the safety at the facility?
That's a pretty broad topic. I mean, we're OSHA compliant. We follow all of the rules and regulations, whether it's confined space, lockout, tagout, trenching, all of the the life critical safety policies and programs that are out there. We have annual training for all of our folks. We've had our folks are trained in in confined space rescue, and in in life-saving activities as well. Every task we do, every meeting that we have starts with a safety discussion. And that's at the with what we do, whether it's in electrical switching or isolation, of various pieces of equipment, operating fuels, opening and closing valves, or just simple day-to-day activities. Those are safety is at the forefront of a lot of things that we do, as well as our environmental performance too. So those are things that we take seriously when it comes to plant safety and the safety of our folks.
Just a follow-up, with the decrease in employees on the site and there's been a lot of change in operations, and I was wondering whether you can tell us whether you feel like this plant is now safer than it used to be, or as safe as it used to be, or not as safe as it used to be when it was burning coal compared with when it's burning natural gas.
There was a lot of inherent dangers associated with burning coal, heavy equipment, bulldozers, locomotives, crushers, a lot of things that are no longer in service anymore. I'm not going to discount the safety of anything that we have left in place, but I do think that a lot of that drove a lot of the staffing, and it's a bit of a simpler operation without all of that auxiliary equipment and the fly ash, bottom ash, and all of those things that went along with the coal are now gone.
Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Henry Cole, you had your hand raised, and then there's Armin M. after that, and then we have something in the Q&A from Dr. Jacoby Wilson that we'll follow up with next. So go ahead, Mr. Cole.
Okay. I had one general question, which is there a separate time for comments, or are the questions and comments to be given all at once? I'm a little confused about that.
Okay, so we already posted the notice for this permit back in June, and we did not receive any requests for hearing or like formal testimony or written comments on this initial Title V permit. But you can definitely, any questions that you have about the facility, you can submit to us at any time, or any comments that you have. We'll definitely be following up with you on the information that you found in the table. And then also to send you the 2020 and 21 emissions numbers.
I had one question and then just a brief comment. My further question is, going back to that slide on the number of hours that different units were operating, it went by kind of fast. Maybe I saw it wrong, but I thought I saw something like 300 hours for the gas burning units. Am I right on that? 300 hours per year?
Yeah, let me
Maybe you
pull it up
can-
for you here. Hang on.
Yeah, yeah, good. Thank you.
Oops. One sec. There we go. So,
Okay, so-
yeah, go ahead. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm confused because are you telling me that this plant, these gas burning units only operate 300 hours a year?
Sometimes less even. Yes, that's correct.
So this is not a baseload facility?
No. Yeah, the
Oh,
coal
interesting.
units typically would run more than these units 3 and 4, the gas-fired units 3 and 4. The operating profile on units 3 and 4 didn't change when the coal units retired. So they are still in this, anywhere a low of 150, a high of 500 hours per year per unit is that's kind of the typical range.
That's
So-
like, 10 or 20 days, right?
Say
Yeah.
20 days or so. Yeah. And so these will typically come on the really cold days and on the really hot days. And if we have like over the summer a string of 6-7 hot days, they're actually designed to come online in the morning and run throughout the day and then come off once the temperatures cool off, maybe 10-11 o'clock at night. And then they'll just be off for a few hours and then come right back on the next day. So they don't run on these off-peak hours. They're actually designed to just be there when they're really needed.
Okay, so let me follow up on that. The state and the federal government are moving towards curbs on emissions, fossil fuel emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. And it was a little disappointing to hear that there's no plan to sunset this facility. And given that it only runs for these hundreds of hours a year, it seems like there's a great deal of greenhouse gas emissions for such a short period of time. And I think what I would like to recommend is that the community and interested parties get together with the company and with the state, maybe with EPA, and talk about some kind of plan to phase out and to replace these units, which add greenhouse gases. I mean, all we need to do is look at Florida, the disaster there. That's not past history. That's going to get worse. I think we sometimes act with earplugs and blindfolds on. There has to be a change, or we're going to be in great trouble. These dangers are not necessarily restricted to Florida. We could have terrible flooding right in Eagle Harbor. So my idea is to get people together, including the company, and we do appreciate your turning off the coal, but we'd like to see a discussion about phasing out the fossil fuel and replacing it with renewable energy, and maybe even something like a cooperative with Eagle Harbor and surrounding communities to utilize that solar energy. I think GenOn could make a tremendous name for itself by engaging in that kind of dialogue and coming forward with a plan. We need to act in accord with the current situation. And I'll stop at that point, but thank you for listening.
Sure. That I can make a quick comment, Mr. Cole. You know, the reducing, actually, I'm going to advance a couple slides here to the emission slide. By shutting down the coal, you know, coal emits 40% more CO2 on a heat input basis than natural gas. So by shutting down the coal, that really did make a significant impact reduction in the CO2 emissions from the facility. So that is, you know, maybe it's a step in the right direction from your point of view, but maybe not far enough. But if you can see, you know, like in 2021, the dark blue, navy blue line is, you know, maybe 900,000 tons of CO2, and this year we are under 200,000. So,
Well, yeah,
we are heading in the right direction, I guess.
yes, and but I think the company could do a good thing for the community and for itself if it pioneered by having a phase-out plan that eliminated fossil fuels. And it doesn't have to come like overnight. It could be phased in over a 10-year period, for example. So I'm certainly willing to participate. I'm sure this would be of interest to the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cole. So we did have one more raised hand, and then I'm going to go to the Q&A section because we have a number of questions there. So Armin M., did you have a question or comment?
Yes, I definitely agree with Mr. Cole. I believe there needs to be more done for the community. And I had two questions. One in regards, is there any future plan of maybe carbon capture as a remedy for capturing carbon? And I'm sure there is financial incentives to do so. And that's my first question. And the second question is, in terms of the coal plant, afterwards, the coal plants, when you say you did coal ash removal, was there any remediation efforts done to remediate? Because, you know, coal ash is toxic. All the byproducts from coal is toxic. Has there been any remediation efforts to fix the soil, at least in that part of the county or the state, to help the soil biology as well, to help the community in general?
Okay, first question, there's no projects, you know, associated with carbon capture or any upgrades at the facility in the plans at this point in time. And the you know, as far as, you know, we did you know, the largest footprint we have was where the coal pile was, and you know, that coal pile has been removed, that ground was remediated. It was neutralized. Soil was brought in, and now that area is you know, turned over to grass. You know, the ash, bottom ash, fly ash, were not stored on the site. They were trucked elsewhere.
Thank you for your efforts.
Okay, great. Okay, so I don't see any other hands raised. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the Q&A, and Dr. Jacoby Wilson has a good number of related questions. So I'm going to go ahead and read his questions together and hopefully come up with a few answers to these questions. So the first question is, how is the state agency engaging Region 3, which is the region of the federal EPA that Maryland belongs to, Region 3 and EPA headquarters, on the cumulative impacts of air quality health impact assessments, SEP projects, which are supplemental environmental projects, NEPA mitigation agreement funding, and leveraging dollars from the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the IRA to address EJ, environmental justice, and health concerns. His other question is, well, the EPA administrator, it's more a statement and a question. The EPA administrator has a major focus on environmental justice. There's also a focus on EJ in the EPA's new strategic plan. How is the management of this facility in concordance with the strategic plan? So I'll turn that back to the company after I get through the questions. What is the facility and MDE doing to monitor, track, reduce impacts? And then what efforts are being taken to assess hyperlocal air quality impacts for the nearby community, fence line community? See the US EPA NEJAC report on air quality monitoring, tracking VOCs, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, as he has it as PAHs, black carbon, chemical mixtures in general, criteria, air pollutants, hazardous air pollutants. And then I think he just was agreeing about getting co-benefits and distributional justice and restorative justice for the local community, and that it should be a collaboration between the company, MDE, the Maryland Energy Administration, the Public Service Commission, and the local community. So that's a lot to take in, right, on the questions, but I just did want to address the first part. So EPA and the local or the region of EPA that Maryland works with, we are meeting monthly with our Region 3 counterparts to discuss environmental justice and environmental justice initiatives in the state of Maryland. We have some local legislation that's currently actually started October 1st. So, and it's mainly focused on new construction. So when there's new construction that triggers a certain level, we are required, the applicant is required to determine what the area is and generate what's called an environmental justice score and report that score. And then the department has to review the score and also talk about what the impact of this new construction is on certain areas to determine whether that area is an overburdened community or not. The state is actively involved in trying to identify overburdened communities at this time. We do have projects right now, hyperlocal air monitoring projects in the Curtis Bay area and also in the Cheverly area as well. So we're always looking for new projects. We do have a few. We're applying for some EPA grants, which is some of the funding that Dr. Wilson is talking about here. Is we're trying to apply for grants to be able to do more of these hyperlocal air monitoring where it's not necessarily from stationary sources. What we've actually found in Cheverly, we have an entire, on our website, you can see a lot of information about the data that we've collected in Cheverly. A lot of it has peak times when there's high traffic, and a lot of it is idling trucks from warehousing. There's a lot of warehouses going up. We order everything online, and so there's a lot of shipping, and so these trucks are idling. Some of them are refrigeration trucks and required to be on all the time. So while they're being loaded, there's a lot of diesel particulate. And that's what these monitors are actually measuring. And we're going after it from like a multi-prong approach. So it's not, the Air Quality Permits Program regulates stationary air sources, but we also have a mobile sources program, which goes after, diesel emissions from trucks, dirty emissions from mobile equipment. They have an agreement with the port to work on equipment at the port. So we are working on several different levels. And then we have a whole program dedicated to climate change. And Maryland has just passed probably one of the most stringent climate change rules that we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by probably the largest percentage in the country. So they are looking at that through regulation and legislation. And that may eventually impact some of the choices that Chalk Point makes in the future as far as what they might do for that plant in the future. If we're requiring our facilities to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, that we are looking into all of those resources and trying to tap into some of the funding that Dr. Wilson is referring to here, and also working with our EPA Region 3 counterparts so they can provide us assistance as well. And so, so even though this EPA administrator has a major focus on environmental justice, so does the Department of the Environment. EJ is also on our radar, so that is definitely something we're doing, which is one of the main reasons we're having this community informational meeting, because we want to make sure we're reaching out to the community to get your names, to get everybody on board. We're trying to work with the other administrations so that we're not completely siloed. Like I said before, water had their own thing and land had their own thing and air had their own thing. And now we're realizing that maybe we should be focusing a little more, because when you're talking about an overburdened community, it could be a water issue, a land issue, an air issue, or all of those things. And the cumulative impact from all of those effects, on all the different sources is what we need to be looking at from that perspective. And that's definitely something we're moving forward to doing. Let's see. Okay, so one of the questions was, how is management of this facility in concordance with the strategic plan? What is the facility and MDE doing to monitor, track, and reduce impacts? So as far as this facility is concerned, obviously retiring their coal units is a huge environmental benefit for us. We want to be able to issue this permit so that they no longer have any permission to operate the coal under any circumstance unless they got a new approval from us, which is not going to happen in this day and age. So everything that's in that permit is pretty much what they're doing, monitoring and tracking for their existing equipment. As far as like impacts as a whole for the facility, like I said, we are reaching out to certain communities and doing outreach. And so it's probably this area, especially given the level of interest and also the area where I think somebody mentioned Brandywine, where there's power plants all co-located in the same area. We're looking at those areas as well. Right now, I think we have some agreements, like I said, with Cheverly and Curtis Bay and Turner Station. So we're working on getting grant money so that we can do some more outreach, hire more staff, and also our air monitoring programs going out and helping and assisting with hyperlocal monitoring. So that's what we're doing now. Right now we're at the identification stage. So we're identifying the overburdened communities. I think that also answers.
Can I chime in real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Quick. Yeah, so definitely been working with TAD. Just for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jacoby, University of Maryland, College Park. I do a lot of hyperlocal air quality monitoring, and the reason why I mention it is, I also do a lot of engagement with the federal EPA, with the Office of Environmental Justice. There's actually a new National Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights was just launched 2 weekends ago. So I think in the strategic plan, there's a lot of focus on environmental justice, but my point is to making sure that I know it's happening, but it just doesn't stop with headquarters, doesn't stop at Region 3. It gets embedded into all the state agencies. So this discussion today, I know we're talking from MDE's perspective, but really, as it relates on the solution side, there has to be a discussion with MEA and PSC as well, with the company and the local communities, as it relates to multimedia impacts of the operation. I said in chat, yes, the greenhouse gas emissions have gone down with no longer burning coal and co-pollutants. The co-pollutants are nitrogen dioxide, the volatile organic compound, the black carbon, particulate matter, other things, right? They impact human health. Greenhouse gases can directly, climate change perturbations can indirectly or directly impact human health. But the co-pollutants are things that cause asthma and asthma attacks, and also can impact your DNA, impact reproduction, have neurocognitive effects as well. So I just want to say that real quickly. But I think that's important to talk about, and the monitoring is helpful. But then on the solution side, I think for MDE working with the local communities, I appreciate the mayor's comments about the burden, the long-term burden on the community. How can you use the SCP? How can you get mitigation dollars? How are you, the agency, and other agencies going to work to get monies into the communities to restore them? I mean, that's what they're asking for. And this, as Dr. Cole mentioned, with the RA funds, how can you move away from gas to clean energy? That's going to benefit still the company, but it's a win-win-win for the environment, for the local community, the company as well. So I think that's the conversation that needs to be had, because you have the money now to do it. Didn't have the money before, but with the 2 bills, there's a lot of money coming down through the region to the state, where this money needs to go to these communities first. Eagle Harbor, Brandywine, Lothian, and others in the state that are dealing with these kind of issues. They should be, the frontline communities should be at the front of the line when it comes to the investment. So I just want to say that. I'll pass the mic back.
Thank you, Dr. Whitson. No, I definitely appreciate that. We will be taking all of that information back. This community informational meeting is very important to us. We've noticed there's a lot of interest, and I'll be definitely reporting it back to our deputy director and our director and Tad as well. Unfortunately, Tad's retiring at the end of October, but we're in good hands. We have Chris Hoagland is our new air director, and he's very strong on climate change generally and environmental justice. And those are our 2 initiatives for our air administration that when he took over as the director, has expressed to us that all of our programs as a whole need to be having, 2 main goals is reducing the climate change impact and also addressing environmental justice issues. So that is definitely on our radar for sure. So I appreciate all of that.
And one last point, and just making sure there's coordination with the other agencies and
Yes,
with NDE through the Commission on Environmental Justice, Sustainable, the two commissions. So you have the Commission on Environmental Justice, Sustainable Communities, and also Commission on Climate Change. So making sure that's a coordination, with those commissions, with those agencies, because those agencies are on those commissions. So I think just to have some structure and make sure the community's voices are there. And just for the mayors, the next EJ Commission meeting, they're going to talk about Justice 40, which is a relevant framework to talk about getting benefits that y'all deserve. So I just want to say that the next EJ Commission meeting, so that could be part of the follow-up. I just want to say that. I'm sorry, I passed the mic back.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Yeah, no, we definitely appreciate all of that additional information. It is, like I said, at the forefront. We've already passed our own state regulations. We're not necessarily waiting for EPA to make these changes or to grant us the money, but the money sure would awfully help. So we are definitely seeking out grants to be able to reach out to the communities as we'd like. Okay, so we do have a couple more questions in the Q&A. Layla Riazzi, you wanted to know if the operating hours are capped at the current level, or is there a possibility the operating hours could expand? And if they expand, what measures MDE and public involvement, if any, would be required? Do you have that, Dave?
Actually, I think, yeah, Mike, do you want to?
Yeah. I mean, the operating hours are a function of the day ahead bids in the market. I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but I don't believe we have any operating hour limits. I think we do on some of the combustion turbines, but maybe not on 3 and 4. But all of those hours are a function of the market and where and when we're needed to dispatch.
Yeah, I mean, I can confirm that we do actually have operating hour limitations on the combustion turbines. So there is a maximum number per year for the 4 units, 3, 4, 5, 6 combustion turbines, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there's an upper limit. But I think really the there are new plants going in, and they typically are more efficient than the ones that we have at our plant. And so I think the likelihood of our units running a whole bunch more all of a sudden is unlikely. They'll probably continue to fill the role that they're in right now, which is sort of the peaking and supporting role. So that would be the anticipated future operation of the plant.
Right, and there are limits that they can't exceed in their permit, and so they have to curb their operations in order to stay compliant with all of the pollutant limits. Layla, I'm sorry, you raised your hand. Did you want to just go ahead and ask? There was another question in the Q&A as well. So if you want to.
Yes, I just wanted to know a little bit more about can these limits be doubled, tripled, if the economic conditions, situation calls for it, just to have an understanding, because just as someone else noted, these are very low level uses, and I understand the rationale behind how this plant is being used at this point in time, but just for the community to understand what wiggle room is within that. So you mentioned that there are limits. It would be great for the community to know what those limits are and what those limits are compared to the current planned usage. Does that make sense? What I'm setting up?
All the limits are actually in the permit itself. So that stuff is, and the permits are public documents. So that extra information is in there. So yeah, but the units are fill a certain role, and that's the way we anticipate that it'll be going forward.
Okay. And so I'm asking for MDE if it is possible to pull those figures out or highlight those figures just for community to know. Yeah, rather than I'm anticipating that people aren't going to be wading through the entire document. So that could be helpful. As far as the other question that I had, I believe that the cooling towers operate both for the now removed coal aspect of this and also for the oil aspect of it. But I just wanted to be certain, if the cooling towers aren't being utilized now, is there a plan for them to be dismantled?
No, they support units 3 and 4, so they are
Okay.
they continue to operate. They
Okay.
were not associated with coal units.
Okay. Go
And
ahead.
then just I can just tack on a little bit with the cooling towers. You know, the purpose of the cooling tower is to recirculate the cooling water that goes through the turbines. So by having a cooling tower, we do not use as much river water. You know, so units 1 and 2, the coal units, we would draw water in and then run it right out, and the water would be continuously used, and you know, millions of gallons, you know, a day. And with the cooling towers, there's a much less river water usage. So even though you may feel they're, you know, unsightly, they are actually a large benefit to for the water and the aquatic life.
Thank you. The other two things that I had in the chat, one was an offer. Well, always thanks to Dr. Jacoby Wilson for our hyper local air quality monitoring program and how we've come into that. If people want to know more from the perspective of someone who lives in a town who's taken that on, feel free to reach out to me. And then 2, there's been reference here to the climate action plan of the county. And I served as several other people on this call, the resident advisory group there, and that process is going to start up for its next aspect of this, and put a link in for people to find out more. And if you're interested in exploring being part of that resident advisory group. And thank you so much for this meeting. I always learn a great deal and come away with many questions.
Yes, thank you. So I'm pretty sure I'll be able to, I mean, you can look it up right now if you go to the triangle, square, and question sheet. There's a number of links to certain websites that are hyperlocal air monitoring network in Cheverly, the information about that. But also, I think once the meeting concludes, they'll send me the list of the questions and answers, and hopefully I'll be able to pass that back out to everyone following this meeting. I did want to try and keep it on time because I know you guys, your time is precious. And so I did set this for 6:30 to 8 o'clock, but I just want to make sure if anyone has any additional questions or if they have an opportunity. We do still have one person on the phone. In order to unmute from the phone, you have to hit *6. So if you're on the phone and you have any questions, you could definitely do that now if you had any questions. Okay, I don't see the person on the phone having a question, but Mayor Waters, you have your hand raised?
Yes, for the record, I would ask, you know, we were left out of notifications. And for the record, these matters are extremely important. And I don't know how the town, you know, this power plant is in our backyard, how, you know, we're not notified. We've requested, you know, repeatedly, redundantly to be notified, and we're not notified. And it's concerning. So for the record, I would ask that the power plant or the government, you know, entities responsible, that the town, you know, that we be notified. If there's a problem with contact information, I can supply the contact information for notification. But again, you know, please notify us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and like I said, anyone who officially registered will get additional information and will be added to our interested parties list for this Chalk Point facility. If you weren't able to officially register and you joined the meeting through a shared link, if you could email Shannon Heafy, it's in the Q&A, but it's also Shannon, SHANNON .Heafy, HEAFEY @ .gov. And with your email address or however you want to be contacted, your mailing address. I know that, snail mail is not really how people communicate now, but if you prefer that, we can do that as well. So anybody that had participated, sorry, there's actually more recommendations. There's some more things that are being added in the Q&A. So like I said, I should be able to pass that along. Once the meeting's concluded, all the links of the questions. I do have on record that I'm going to be providing 2020 and 2021 emissions that we have certified. We're going to take a look at table 3 and figure out what the discrepancy is on that one. I think that was it. And also, Mayor Waters, if you can just provide me the names of the people that you talked to, land and water, about testing around your facility, maybe we can actually form a group, or I can talk to our directors about reaching out to those directors and seeing if we can get you some action on that. Does anybody have any other questions before we end the meeting? Okay, thank you guys so much for participating. Once again, my name's Sana Sarasak. It's a little difficult to spell, but most of you got the calendar invitation from me. You also got separate emails from me as well. So you should have my email address if you need to reach me. If you want to be added to an interested parties list, please contact Shannon, because she is our public participation coordinator and she keeps all of the records for that as well. So, you can copy me on any email that you send to Shannon. You can also email me directly and I can forward anything to Shannon as well. But if you could just send that to Shannon so she can have that information all in one place, that would be great. Okay, thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time this evening. Please reach out if you have any questions. And
Thank you.
as soon as the video is released, all of that, I'll try and send all of that information out to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.